the Ja Morant saga. As of now, they have lost multiple games in a row, lost again on Wednesday night. And we got a report from Sam Amick over at The Athletic that the Kings and Wolves are monitoring Ja Morant. That was what Amick reported at The Athletic. Windhorst was over at Yahoo Sports Daily also on Wednesday, and he said something interesting that contrasts that a little bit, but sort of not really. Windy said, the best move for the Grizzlies is to keep Ja Morant, use the picks they got in the Bane trade. And he said, quote, and that's what they're going to try to do. And he said he could try to throw out teams and hypotheticals and all that, but people would aggregate them. But what he said clearly, he said, quote, I don't think there's actually any action on this at all. It's all hypothetical. That didn't stop you, Tom? You and Dan Devine on the big number this week from a bunch of fake Ja trades. You talked about the Kings and the Mavs and the Nets and the Rockets and the Bucks as fits for Ja Morant. And we're in a situation here, though, where my main thought here, Tom, is this is getting ugly. It's getting ugly for Memphis. Kelly Eco over at Yahoo Sports was at the game last night between the Rockets and the Grizzlies, and he wrote, Morant's body language was off all evening. Outside of a mini briefing midway through the fourth, Morant didn't speak to Isalo, the Grizzlies head coach. During timeouts, Morant would be off to himself at either end of the bench. There was no reassuring handshakes or taps from Isalo whenever Morant was subbed out. The tension palpable within FedEx Forum. Tom, I don't think this is going to change with the return of Zach Edey. I think this is something that could only get uglier and uglier, which is why you guys are right to talk about a bunch of these trade scenarios.
Yeah, Kev, I think this is has the potential to go full Jimmy Butler. You know, like the passive-aggressive remarks to the media, the suspensions, we're already past that point. But the question is whether we're going to see a Jimmy Butler-esque, just full-on dysfunction and creating an uncomfortable atmosphere that is so toxic that no one wants to be there anymore. And it's just going to come to a point where Ja Morant eventually comes to a point where he's just going to either ask out directly, or the organization is just going to say, this is way too uncomfortable for everyone involved and we need to move on from this. It's easy to say that here, as we sit here on November 6th, that everything's going to be fine. They're just going to keep everything together. But these are real human beings and real organizations and workplaces, right? We can sit here and say, yeah, it's uncomfortable. People are going to get a little bit testy here and there, but we're not actually on the team plane. We're not actually in the locker room. We're not actually at the team meals, at the film sessions. And we already know that it has reached a point that they needed to suspend the guy. One game with a very terse, just one sentence statement. And we know that this is very uncomfortable for everyone involved. But as we saw with the Jimmy Butler situation, it can get a lot uglier. And I wonder if Ja Morant and his father, who's courtside at every home game, I wonder if they start pressing some buttons to make this really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I my gut tells me that could be where this goes. And ultimately, like, Ja has sucked this year. I mean, he hit a game winner at some point, but he's shooting 38% from the field. He's shooting 14% from three. I mentioned on my podcast earlier in the week with Jason Timpf that at that time, he had many airballed three-point attempts as he had made three-point attempts. He's since made one. So he has 6 made three-pointers, 5 airballed three-pointers out of, so far this year, 43 total attempts. I mean, his shot has fallen apart. He's not getting to the rim as often. He's not putting in great effort on defense. He quit on the team, which is why they suspended him. It's ugly already. And at this point, I mean, with the Kings, you know, they need a point guard. It makes sense for them to monitor them. The Wolves are interesting. And I have a fake trade here, Tom, that I wanted to show you involving Ja Morant, because I think with Ja, the Wolves are a team that does make some sense. They make some sense. It's not perfect sense because of the Ja Morant fit, but you could send back Mike Conley, Naz Reid, Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller. That works salary-wise. Something would have to be diverted. 2032 first-round swap. This is similar to the Kyrie Irving trade that we saw when Brooklyn and Dallas made a swap. You get the Mike Conley return in Memphis for his final season. You can sell that if you're the Grizzlies. And for the Wolves, like, Morant clearly has risks, but there's no denying the highs that he has had in his past as a player. And this is a team that needs a point guard, an upgrade at point guard. If Dillingham's not going to do it with Conley's fall off, I'm intrigued by the idea for Minnesota, but I'd have a real pit in my stomach if Ja Morant was the guy that I'd be betting on to elevate my team from Western Conference to NBA Finals. But what do you think about this trade idea, Tom?
Memphis should accept that right away. Don't even think about it. If you get Naz Reid, you get a leader in Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham. Kev, I can't wait to talk to you about what is going on in Memphis with Rob Dillingham. After this preseason, he was awesome. Awesome. He led the entire NBA in assists this preseason. He had a great performance for a couple weeks there where it looked like he was going to be a real part of this rotation. And if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting that guy. Free this dude out of Minnesota because he's clearly buried in this rotation. And I feel like Rob Dillingham can do a lot of the things that Ja Morant was used to be doing, is just getting into the paint. And yeah, he's not going to finish above the rim like Ja Morant. But if you're going to take a guy who's an incredibly good and talented scorer, really slithery in getting into the paint and can really pass the ball, I think that he made a leap this preseason in doing that. Memphis should absolutely do that with Naz Reid also in that package. From the Minnesota side, I mean, you're putting a lot of eggs in the basket of Rudy Gobert's defense, and they just have not been able to defend at all when Rudy Gobert hasn't been on the floor. And I'm worried that you put Ja Morant on this team without Mike Conley and his leadership, it all falls on the shoulders of Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards to basically take that burden of playing high-level defense nonstop and being able to plug all those gaps, both at a leadership standpoint without Mike Conley and also defensively. I worry about Ja Morant, his ability to reach those levels in the postseason with all of the warts of Rudy Gobert defensively and offensively at the highest levels of the sport. But then again, you look at the standings, Minnesota has to do something, whether it's internally or externally, to right this ship.
Well, ultimately, Tom, I do think that's why with Minnesota, first of all, that's my fake trade. I would not do that if I'm Minnesota. It's really a trade constructed from the Memphis standpoint. Like, well, here's what we would need. If I'm Minnesota and I'm giving up Rob Dillingham, who I traded to first to move up to go get, I'm not trading my 2032 swap. I'm not giving that up as well. But ultimately, I do think like this is the type of thing I'm sure Memphis would want. If they were to trade Ja, that's probably like the most that they would really realistically get, unless Ja Morant returns to his prior highs that we've seen. But ultimately, you're spot on about Minnesota. And that leads me to a thought here right now, Tom. Minnesota right now is not an NBA Finals contender. And we saw in their loss on Wednesday night to the New York Knicks, the Knicks just got layup over and over and over in the game when Rudy Gobert was off the floor. And this is one of the concerns about this team right now, is because with the Wolves, like we're throwing the highlights right up on screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. Karl-Anthony Towns didn't have a big night, 15, 10, and 4, but we're seeing the Knicks facilitate through him, getting him touches and opportunities, guys cutting to the rim anytime Gobert is off the floor. Guys, like, it's not even transition baskets, but guys getting to the rim with ease. Nobody's getting back. There's no help defense. And Naz Reid and Julius Randle sometimes out there together, not a lot of rim protection, not a lot of great size. And it's unfair to Naz Reid to ask him to be a rim protector. He's better as a 4. But ultimately, it just feels like a fundamentally flawed team right now. Everybody talks about the point guard spot for the Wolves. But the biggest problem on the team is what happens without Rudy Gobert out there. And so the numbers so far this season, Tom, with Gobert on the floor, the Wolves have a 109.7 defensive rating, which would be the equivalent of third in the NBA. With Gobert off the floor, they have a 134.8 defensive rating, the equivalent of last. And the shot distribution numbers are really where that where that difference is apparent. When Gobert is on the floor, only 20% of the shots they allow are at the rim. When Gobert is off the floor, 32% of the shots they allow are at the rim. And so there's a massive difference, including as we saw with the Knicks dropping 137 on them, with Gobert on and off, teams just getting to the basket night in, night out. And that's the biggest issue for Minnesota right now, on top of the point guard issue, which is huge. And I just look at this team and I'm like, they've probably been surpassed by multiple teams in the West right now.
Yeah, and Rudy Gobert is already, 33, turning 34?
Mm-hmm.
this is
ask of
as
him.
good as it's going to get. Like, the decline, if it hasn't started already, it's going to happen, right? So if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you got to figure out a way to defend at a high level with not everything being on Rudy Gobert having to play 48 minutes a game. Kev, I'm so glad you brought up these numbers. The other number I wanted to point out here with Rudy Gobert on the floor and off the floor, when he's on the floor, the Minnesota Timberwolves are allowing just 42 points in the paint every 100 possessions. When he's off the floor, it goes up to 61. So 42 to 61 points in the paint every 100 possessions. It kind of illustrates that it is a red carpet to the rim when Rudy Gobert's not out there. You got Julius Randle, Naz Reid, not known for their rim protection at all. But this is something that it is part and parcel of what the Minnesota Timberwolves, their identity as a team, is that we're going to have Anthony Edwards offensively just be such a heliocentric, everything, all the gravity is around him, and Julius Randle playing bully ball. But defensively, it all comes down to Rudy Gobert. And when you got a 7-footer, mid-30s, and everything in your defense funnels to him, you better hope that he stays healthy and defies the age curve, because that is their only hope of contending in the Western Conference.
It's tough, man. And I think, like, you get Wolves fans, I see some posts show up on my For You page about, Chris Finch, he's got to play Johan Beringer. It's like, if you're relying on Johan Beringer to be your backup five, it's as a rookie, a teenager, very raw out of France, it's a lot to ask, but they don't have any other answers. And ultimately, I think this goes back to the issue with Finch last year. Finch last season, I'm like, where's Terrence Shannon? Where's Rob Dillingham? Why are you not investing time into these young players to possibly have them ready for the postseason? And it's the same thing again this year. Dillingham not playing consistent minutes, Terrence Shannon not playing consistent minutes every night. Those guys should be playing more. You should just throw out Beringer and see what he does. I mean, he's a great shot blocker, even if he's raw, if it gets into foul trouble for 10, 15 minutes per game. If he elevates you from last in the NBA in defensive rating when Gobert is off the floor to 20th, like, that makes a big difference over the course of a full season. And so I have some issues with Finch's handling of the youth on that team, Tom.
I just, called the game with the Blazers last night on Wednesday night, OKC and Portland. And one thing OKC did with AJ Mitchell last year is they played him 77% of his minutes last year with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or with Jalen Williams, J-Dub. And there's this, I was told by another executive around the league, is that this is a really smart thing for OKC. Something they do really well is they take guys, two-way contracts, rookies, second-round picks, and they integrate them in the real rotation and get them to see what it looks like with a lot of talent around you, what the game is supposed to be played like, instead of just giving those guys garbage time minutes, not next to Anthony Edwards, not next to Rudy Gobert, not next to Julius Randle. And so what they're doing is they're developing talent through integrating them right into the full rotation. So AJ Mitchell last year seemed like he might have been struggling at times to stay above water with a lot of the first unit guys out there on both ends of the floor. But look at how he's doing this year. It's not an accident that AJ Mitchell looks like not just an NBA player, but a really good NBA player, a second-round pick, two-way contract last year, and is now, as of last, I think before the game on Wednesday night, he was their second highest scorer on the team, total points scored. So Rob Dillingham and Shannon, these guys got to play and not just be buried on the bench in the doghouse, because I do think developmentally they would really, really benefit from having that sunshine.
100%. I mean, look, Conley's fallen off a cliff. He's a borderline NBA player at this point. I mean that with all due respect. He's had an unbelievable career. But at this point, like, you can't rely on Mike Conley in the postseason. So you have to give an opportunity to these other young guys on your roster. If you're not getting rim protection from Naz Reid and Julius Randle, you have to try a fourth big in the rotation and give a chance to Johan Beringer, who can block shots with his eyes closed. He's unbelievable at blocking shots. He's very natural at it. So I think that's very important for Finch before they make any big moves, is play the kids more, see how it works out. If you start losing every night, well, that maybe then it's very clear you have to make a move. But at this point, I think they first have to invest in the youth, see how it helps the team out, and then that's when you can talk about panic trades for a Ja Morant. But at this point, Tom, play the kids.